Hey guys, welcome to another video on Bharat and Germany. My name is Bharat, and in this video, I have Karan from Karan Punjabi with us, and we are going to have a super nice discussion with Karan about how it is to study and live in France versus Germany, and we are going to see different kind of aspects. So, Karan, welcome to the channel. To the people who are watching you the first time, can you please tell us a bit about yourself, and then we jump into the questions.
Hi, firstly, thanks Bharat for having me. My name is Karan Punjabi. I originally come from Mumbai, India. I'm not Punjabi, which is a question.
That's what I wanted to ask too.
Uh, but yeah, why I'm here today mainly is because I chose to study in France 3 years back. And I just completed my graduation from EPAC Business School in Nice, which is in the south. And I also did a double degree with the University of South Wales. And the program that I was pursuing was Bachelor's in Business Administration. So yeah, it's been great. And ever since I've moved, people have asked me a gazillion questions about studying in France, since it's not a very common choice compared to the standard UK, US, India.
Yeah.
But yeah, apart from that, about myself, I also have my own YouTube channel where I do a lot of crazy vlogs and try to show my life abroad to my audience.
That's very, very interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think the thumbnails really stand out. I think you put a lot of effort inside everything. So anybody who is new, take a look at Karan's channel. I'm going to put his channel link in the description below. And he is recording a lot of videos about France, his lifestyle and so on. Definitely super interesting stuff. So Karan, how did you come to the idea of studying in France, and how is the education system there?
Okay. So firstly, I always knew I wanted to go abroad since a really early age. And throughout my schooling life, I did the international curriculum. I did the A levels, and before that, I did the IGCSEs. So I knew I wanted to go abroad. And I also took French for 6 years in school. So from grade 4 till grade 10, I took French. And, I've always tried to not take the off-beaten path. And I was very clear I didn't want to go to the UK, US. Singapore was an option a few years back. But as I really got into it and I started traveling a lot as I grew older, I realized that Europe is the right place for me. And because I'd already learned French, France seemed like, a great place, especially because of the opportunities. The fact that there are so many, multinational companies there. You've got LVMH, you've got Canon, and it's just this growing sector. The business world is rapidly developing. So is the education. Hence, I chose France. Also, the weather is lovely. The people are nice, despite popular belief. The people in the south are really, really nice. And yeah, I just wanted this European culture, the European experience of living abroad, and hence I chose France.
That is, I think, such an important thing that many people underestimate, and that is when you go to UK, US, Canada, whatsoever, or Australia, you're essentially locking yourself into one single culture, one single language. But if you come to Europe, so for example, our experience has been so far that from 2016 to 2019, we lived in Germany. In 2020, we moved to Denmark. We lived there. So first we were exposed to German, then we were exposed to Danish. In 2021, we moved to Romania. Now we are exposed to the Romanian culture and the language. So this kind of freedom you have of just choosing countries, whatever fits you in your lifetime. I think that is such an underrated thing that people don't understand.
And it's a roller coaster, man. I mean, it adds a whole different dimension to your experience. Just the fact that there's a different language to learn and get adjusted to, the food, the culture. You kind of feel like an alien initially, but then as you get assimilated into the culture, really, you start loving it. There's more that you take back just from theory that you learn in class. You become a different person because you've lived in a different country where they speak a different language. Yeah,
that's so true. And Karan, so how is the education system in France? The public, private universities, tuition fee, and so on. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Okay, so first, to get the cat out of the hat, I get asked this question on a daily basis whether education is free in France. Meaning half my comments are like, "Acha, education is free, let's go there." Okay, this is not true, sadly, to pop all of your bubbles, whoever think this is true. For Europeans, the public universities are free. They pay a very minimal fee, around 170 euros for bachelors and 270 for masters, which is very negligible. It's 16,000 rupees, right? The same course for non-Europeans, so for us Indians, for example, would be around 3,000, 4,000 euros at public universities. And then obviously when you go towards the private side of education, like I chose, then the fee is higher. But at least there you've got the option of studying in English. What
Mhm.
happens most likely is, even though the course is free in the public university, it's going to be in the national language, which is French.
Mhm.
So about the education system, a lot of international schools that are accredited like all over the world. So regardless of whether you're passing out at a bachelor's or a master's level, you have an equal expanse a landscape of opportunities as you would as studying elsewhere in an English speaking country,
Mhm.
which makes it a very good place to study, France. And also another thing is that these multinationals, which I mentioned in your earlier question, LVMH, Dan, and all of these, they really like international talent because our English is better compared to the Europeans.
Mhm.
So if you find the right university, if you perform well there, you're opening a lot of doors for yourself in the future.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. But like Karan, this like 3,000, 4,000 euros actually it's not so much, right? Like if you like compare it, like I think us as Indians, like we cannot complain about like such kind of tuition fee, because like this is
Yeah.
like almost the amount that we would also be paying in our own like institutions back in India. So I
Yeah.
think like this is really not bad. Like I was expecting like France to have, I don't know, like 10, 20,000 euros or something like.
That's that's private
Yeah, yeah,
universities, 10,
yeah. It's the same in
20,000.
Germany.
That's
So
not a
private.
bad rate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The private Germany is the same. Like they also like charge like
Yeah.
anywhere from like 18 to 20,000 euros, sometimes 40,000 euros. So
Yeah.
that's but
When you're still weighing in the benefits
yeah.
and the opportunity cost, living here becomes a bit cheaper than living in like central London, for example.
Mhm.
You go anywhere in France or in Paris, now if you're living in the center of Paris, obviously it's going to be much more expensive. So these other little costs just cut on the fact that the tuition fee is, at a certain rate, and then you're spending much lesser as studying in these countries.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And so how does it work, Karan? Like, do you guys get some kind of semesters ticket or something so that you can like use the public transportation, or like how does it work in France?
Okay, so everything in France below the age of 26, you're discounted from movie tickets to public transport to even a meal at many restaurants. They give you a student discount, which you need a basic student card for. Or, in fact, even if you're below 26 as a whole, which is great because 26 is quite an old age. So, if you're talking for public transport, particularly, this cost would be like 60 to 70% lesser as a normal adult above the age of 26 would pay.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, even with the supermarkets and stuff, almost universities are connected to platforms such as Uni Days or ISIC, which is a student card which you get in France. So when you go grocery shopping, you just show that card and you get discounts.
That's very nice. Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I know that like in Germany too, we get a lot of like student benefits. So for example, you're going to watch movies or something, you always have a student discount, sometimes some kind of like activities, student discount. You want to buy some electronics whatsoever, student
Yeah.
discounts. Like you have, I think in Europe, like this is the general culture that like students are generally incentivized a lot more compared to like, many other countries. So that's very nice. And let's also talk a bit about the living costs, Karan. So, I mean, I generally always use this like website called Numbeo to like calculate the living
Mhm.
cost of two cities. So like Berlin versus Paris and so on. But the thing is like Berlin is a very cheap capital. So like if you take a look at the prices there in general, so we saw the prices were higher in Sweden, higher in Norway, higher in Netherlands and so on when you
Yeah.
compare it to the capital of Germany. And I see like in Paris it's the same. But can you also like maybe give us more numbers? So like let's say how much would the rent cost, how much would groceries cost, and different kind of expenses that you might come across.
Firstly, since you mentioned it, I think as you go up north towards Scandinavia, the prices just keep
Yeah,
hiking.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I was considering Norway for my master's degree,
Mm,
and I just saw the price of the rent and stuff, and it just blew my mind. And I was like, no, Norway is not happening.
yeah.
But yeah, for me specifically, I lived in Nice, which is obviously on the French Riviera.
Mm,
So it was a lot more expensive for me, maybe as expensive as Paris in many cases.
mhm.
But see, your base cost monthly is a rent. The rent ranges from between like 500, to be fair, for a nice sharing accommodation, 3 4 bedrooms. That's how I stayed for the first 3 years. And I lived right in the city center, very close to university. So between 500 and 700, 800 max. I wouldn't advise paying more money than that for rent. At least
Yeah, yeah.
that's your rent. Okay. Apart from that, your groceries, if you budget, there's always a cheaper option. Like Lidl, obviously, is a German supermarket. You shop there, you're going to save more money than shopping at Carrefour, for example. So all these little costs help you a lot. Getting a student transport card. So I think a monthly budget to be very comfortable with all the miscellaneous expenses and shopping, something around 950 to 1000 would keep you very comfortable, and you'd have fun at the same time apart from just going to university.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Okay, so it's not as crazy. I was thinking as in like UK and stuff. But so like if I just compare it quickly to like Germany, and like I said, so in Germany, the Eastern German side, like which was under the Russian occupation previously, like the prices there are just like very, very cheap. So if you take a look at the shared accommodation there, if you are like going to smaller towns like Chemnitz and so on, like there you are having accommodation which is like shared with other people. So of course you have your own private room, but like kitchen and everything else is shared. So there you will get it for like 120 euros to 150 euros per month. Yeah, and like in let's say in Berlin, so Berlin you can find accommodations for anywhere from 250 to 350 euros. If you go down south to Munich is essentially the most expensive German
I've been
city.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like 400 to 500 euros, like sometimes 550 euros. So that's definitely more expensive, but a standard range is like anywhere from 250 to 350 euros. I think like that's the rent. Like groceries and stuff, like we have Aldi. Aldi is like sometimes cheaper than Lidl. So like you also like, get to go there. And for groceries, you can spend somewhere around 100 euros, 120 euros, something like that. So all in all, like the
Week,
maximum
no?
cost
100, for how much?
for 1 month.
For 1 month.
Yeah.
See, now that's cheap. That's very
Yeah,
cheap compared to
yeah.
France. Yeah.
Yeah. And like this is also what we have experienced, Karan. Like when we lived in Germany and when we lived in Denmark, the price differences were insane. So like we were paying in Germany for two people around like 300 euros to 350, 400 euros per month. And now when we moved to Denmark, we are paying for the same kind of groceries anywhere from 700 to 800 euros per month. And I'm like, so first thing is, the first thing is the VAT is higher. So VAT is 25% in Denmark compared to 19% in Germany. Maybe that could be a reason. Like in general, the imported, like, most of the things are imported in Denmark. So that's another thing. So I've seen that Germany, at least like, if you think about the cost of living, like Germany is super cheap, like, amongst the more developed countries. So that's, one thing like where students can definitely like, get some benefit from.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about job opportunities, because we both know like Germany and France both are the major like running engines of the EU economy. So how does the job market look like? Anything you can tell us about it?
Very frankly, right now, as anywhere in the world, it has come to
Yeah.
a very stalemated condition. So it is definitely challenging finding a job right now. And I can tell you this, you're hearing it from the horse's mouth because I just graduated,
Yeah.
right? So in this sense, I would definitely say that a master's degree holds a lot more value than a bachelor's degree. It sounds easy to graduate from bachelor's position and just land a job at a promising multinational, or like a CDD, which is a long-term job in France. Those are very challenging to get. Secondly, the language plays a very, very big role in the French business culture. See, they don't live to work; they work to live. This is what I like about. This is one of the main reasons I chose France, really. And they have their very unique way of working, a very French way of working. So if you want to settle into that, if you want to really get adapted to it, you really need to make conscious effort to learn the language. Otherwise, it is going to be a really tough time even finding a decent job.
Mm.
But that being said, if you want a job in marketing, advertising, then you want to head to cities like Lyon and Paris, because these are like metropolitans. In a place like Nice, where I was, there are not many opportunities for marketing. But then you go into the hotel sector, you go into real estate, tourism. There's a lot of those opportunities down south. So depends on which city you go, what part of France you're in. For example, if you go towards Germany, you can find like a double language job near the border. So as you move along the country itself, the opportunities are very different. Yeah.
Actually, this is such good advice, and I think I wouldn't have said anything different. So when you're coming to Europe, you have to keep in mind that the local languages, the national languages, they play a huge role when you're like, trying to get into a better like job. Because if you want to just get by, like you will find a job like just in English, and like, you'll get by with these things. But if you really want to build a career for yourself, so I remember this time when I was in this info session, like, and there were like these major management consulting companies. McKinsey was there, Hayes was there. There was one more company which was there, and I, as the only brown person in the room, like asked the question that like most international students ask, and that is like, can I still get a job like in McKinsey, like if I don't have like really good German proficiency?
Mhm.
And like the lady there was like so straight. She was like, yeah, I mean, like the starting jobs you can find, but if you really want to go higher up in the managerial positions, you need native German proficiency. Because if you think about it, like again, they're working with like other clients they have to make happy. So you need to be comfortable in giving presentations, in making them feel comfortable in their own mother tongue. So these are like some very important points that I think like everybody should remember. And for English jobs, I think IT and stuff, I think there is no like limit of it. You can find the jobs in IT in English almost like in any country in Europe. But otherwise, if you really want to integrate, if you really want to live and not just survive like your time in Europe, then I think it really makes sense that you're actually learning the language and yeah,
Yeah.
integrating.
Even to build a network, I mean, you're starting out early after undergraduate, graduate. The main thing you want to do is build a professional network which is secure and which will able you to go further in your future studies or whatever you pursue in life. So to do that itself, you're going to have to connect with local people who have already reached those positions. So one thing I always say here to keep mindful of is the university, their courses in English. They are going to sound enticing. They're going to tell you, yeah, join. You'll find an English job, but you have to take this up yourself as a challenge, pay equal amount of attention to the language as you would to your curriculum, and then really build on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like this is such a like nice and honest advice. And like, I've been saying the same thing. I think this is very important that anybody who comes to Europe, like you understand that like national languages do play a huge role. And it is better that like you're spending some time like learning that language too, because studying masters or something like just in English, like that doesn't make a huge difference if you're not able to get inside a specific field. For example, now I was current in this international management engineering, and
Mhm.
there, of course, like I specialized towards marketing. Now, there were also people who were specializing towards accounting and corporate finance, and most of them were having problems because of German proficiency. Because if you're like going towards accounting, you need to learn the trade laws, you need to know the income tax laws, the how to like book different kind of accounts and so on, and you have conversations and correspondence happening with the local German authorities. So of course, all of that paperwork is in German, so you need to have some German proficiency there. So like that's
And for me, like I was working in real estate, and I did a marketing job for a year and a half with a real estate agency in Cannes in the south. But eventually, when I really started building my interest in the field, you need a real estate license. And to get that license, you need to speak French because the whole thing is in French. Otherwise, you cannot get the license.
mm,
So I think it's the same for any sector you're looking at. There's no escape from the language.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. But so let's also talk a bit about Karan. So like what kind of like led you not to go to US but to Germany? Like my reasons are like pretty standard. For example, like I didn't want to go into like insane amounts of like student debts, because you're paying like tuition fee of the universities on one side, but you're also paying heavy living costs of just like living in US for the time duration. Then the gun violence thing, like I think like that is something for me that is an absolute no-go, and Europe is like very safe in that regards. um and also I think like just like this freedom of like choosing and exploring different kind of cultures and languages, that is something you get in Europe and like not really in like US and many other countries. So what were the reasons that like you chose like France specifically, but like not the standard destination of US, Australia, or like Canada and so on?
Okay, I'm going to be clear cut honest with you.
Yeah.
I wanted to be away from my own people. When I found myself in France, in Nice,
Yes,
in the south, I
little
was the
India.
only Indian in the whole university.
Yeah.
I didn't have one Indian friend throughout my 3 years. Okay.
Mm.
So I wanted that challenge on myself
Yeah.
of really being able to adapt not only to French people, but a room full of Europeans and many Americans also that came here. So that's why for me, US, UK, all my friends were going there. I was like, I don't want to take Mumbai ka life and build it abroad. I want
Exactly.
to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that I learned French for 6 years, those happened for me.
Mhm.
And also now, because I'm looking for a master's degree, now I'm searching for a completely different country. So I'm applying to Spain, I'm applying to Italy, I'm applying to Norway, as I mentioned.
Mhm.
So I'm someone who's used to change, very comfortable with change. I like putting myself in such situations. I bet you are too, because you
Yeah.
mentioned 3 countries that you moved to already.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the only reason I chose Europe mainly, and
Okay.
also the permanent residency
Mhm.
fact, which we'll
Yes.
get into later. We'll delve into that deeper. But that to me was a big
Mhm.
chance, because UK, you finish studying, they send you back, pack up the day your course is
Mhm.
over, go back to your country, start your life there.
Yeah.
I didn't go abroad for that. I'm investing so much money, so much
Yeah.
time, because I want to build my life abroad.
So now, what is the story with the permanent residency and citizenship in France?
So there's a lot of ambiguity
Mhm.
surrounding this whole conversation. Okay,
Mhm.
in France specifically, you have to live in the country for 5 years at a stretch. Now, in some cases, the bachelor's that you do, so the 3 years will be a part of those 5 years,
Mhm.
and some people don't count that as 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So once you get a job after your bachelor's or your master's level, India has a bilateral agreement, which many people do not know about, where they give you a 2 year extension to search for a job and then get a CDI, which is a proper job position. So once you pay taxes during this time for like 2 to 3 years, between this frame of 2 to 5 years,
Mhm.
you get something which is called a permanent residency, the PR,
Mhm.
for 10 years.
Okay.
Okay. Once you've proven the language is a very big factor here. They test that your language is at least a B2 or C1 level.
Mhm.
And the fact that you've lived here for 10 years, then you become eligible for a French passport.
Mhm.
So it's a very long time frame. And
Yeah.
again, this depends on waiting periods. If you
Mhm.
do it in a crowded city, maybe you have to wait longer.
Mhm.
But if you do it in a little town, maybe it's a year or two quicker for you. So there's a whole waiting period to do with this PR thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. In Germany, so I think like so far I've talked to like many people from different countries, and it seems like the standard like permanent residency duration like is very similar. Like this is 4 to 5 years. In Germany, like we have 4 years. So like you have to essentially live in Germany for 4 years. So 48 months you have to pay taxes and your social contributions. That makes you eligible for the permanent residency. If you're not doing that and you just came here for studies, you do your master's or bachelor's, and then afterwards you have to work 2 years full time.
Yeah.
And afterwards you can get your permanent residency. So like essentially you can get in as less than like 3.5 years or something, because if you have a 1.5 year master's
Yeah.
program, you have 2 years of work, then you can still apply for it. Then you have this blue card system where you can apply for the permanent residency like even a bit faster, which is just in 21 months. So that's like very streamlined. But for citizenship, you also have the 8 month time duration where the
Yeah.
study period is also counted inside. So essentially like after 8 years you can apply for the citizenship. Yeah. But I
Perfect.
think this is the same current in most of the countries, like 4 years, 4 or 5 years. Like Ireland, I also saw like it's pretty similar. Sweden, Norway, like many of these countries, they have this standard, like the study.
And the fact is, it's getting more and more challenging in France specifically.
Hmm.
People think it's like really easy to come here and get a PR. No, it's not. Even the filing taxes part and stuff, that sounds easy, but
Yeah.
you have to do your research. Otherwise, you're going to land up disappointed. You're going to spend 5 years here and get nothing by the end of it.
Mm.
So, ask questions. This is what I always tell people: do not be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
That is their job to answer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's very good advice too. Like most of the public authorities, like you will see in Europe, they don't have the same system like in India. Like if you're calling them up to ask them a particular question, they are supposed to help you out, and like you can like eat their brain a bit for that. Of course, do your own research. That's always nicer, because otherwise, like Indians start getting bad name. So do some research, ask them the specific questions, and they're like always very helpful.
Yeah.
And Karan, so I know that on Quora, so like Indians love Quora. They love to see questions and advices and things like that. And sometimes like you see these questions where all of a sudden like some person like living in Europe is better all of a sudden, and he says like, yeah, it makes no sense to come to Europe, blah blah, because of the language and all of these things. What kind of things would you say that students should keep in mind when they're coming to Europe, so that they don't end up being one of these people? Because I think a lot of these people are disappointed, like you said, because they did not like do the preparation properly. So what kind of, let's say, tips would you have for the students, like, from your own personal experiences, from your lifestyle and so on, that people should keep in mind when they're coming here?
See, I think when it comes to moving abroad, there's only till a certain point that you can prepare before actually putting yourself in that situation, right? So be prepared for culture shock. This is my biggest advice I give, because I went a bit overconfident, thinking that, I've been to 30 countries before and I've traveled the world, I've been to all corners. So it'll be easy settling into France. Kya hai? It's not so different types.
Yeah.
But once you come there, you go through this honeymoon phase where everything feels like an extended holiday. Okay. And then when this honeymoon phase ends, no, everything just comes crashing down. You're going to have mental breakdowns. You're going to feel like an alien, and that is okay, because that is a part of your experience. 2 months down the line, you might just feel 2 months, just focus that I say it's such a short time period down the line. If you make a conscious effort of blending in, you settle into a point where you feel like you've lived there all your life. So with me, my biggest advice would be the first person, initiate a friendship, initiate a professional, relationship. At the supermarket, have a conversation, just be a little candid, be a little free, don't need to overthink it. There are a lot of other foreigners. We are not the only foreigners there. So I don't understand when Indians give so much how and put this, big level of attention for foreigners. You are a foreigner to them too.
Yeah.
It's the same for them. So just be candid and you will learn. Like, you will fail, but then you will learn. It's a cycle of failing and repeating. Repeating is the most important bit here. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, like, I know so many people, like, they come across an uncomfortable situation and all of a sudden, like, they make this shell around themselves, and, like, they're not going out, not engaging with people, not showing up at different kind of events. Like, even if your university has some kind of event, just show up. If they're having an excursion, just show up. Like, even showing up is like half of the thing done, and then, like, slowly and slowly you generally, like, end up in some kind of conversations. I think, like, that is very important. Also, I think one last question that I would have for you, Karan, and, like, that is the story with racism, because I know that, like, of course, many people feel actual racism, like they have had like experiences with that. But at the same time, I also have to say that some people, like, they just, like, everything becomes like racism all of a sudden. Like, even if the other person has a bad mood and, like, he just, like, said thing in a different way, but you felt, because you are new to this country, that this was a racist event or something. So have you come across both of these kind of situations, or, like, the racism story? Like, how would you maybe, give your thoughts on this a bit?
See, I think it's very normal for this to happen. It's happened with me a couple of times. I can count on my fingers. Maybe at a supermarket, someone spoke to me rudely, or an Uber driver, something as basic as that. But again, it's the way you deal with it, and educate. Tell the person, I don't know. Be upfront. You're not going to lose out on anything by. You're not going to look inferior if you just admit to the fact that you do not know. So I didn't know how to shop groceries in France before coming here. And obviously, people frowned upon me or gave me weird looks in the beginning. I didn't know, basic etiquettes like saying hello, hi, you don't know. So if you don't do that, they are going to be a little shrewd with you. But again, educate, ask questions, research before moving abroad. Those play an important role in the racism conversation, if you're asking me. So if you do your right research and you try to avoid these mistakes or speed bumps, then you're good. Like, you're not going to come into these situations. And obviously, a lot of people ask me that, but I've heard Parisians are very racist and they're shrewd or rough toned. Listen, like, no one has time. It's a city. You do you. Rest, whatever happens, that will happen. That will happen either way.
Yeah, that is a very, very solid advice.
Yeah.
That's a very solid thing, because I think, like, many people, like, take it so seriously, like, nobody has the time to, like, think about you and, like, just put you in a specific category and, like, treat you that way, like, once you fall there. I think, like, generalizing things become very, very difficult. Like, in the same city, like, sometimes you will meet the nicest people on the planet, and, like, sometimes, like, some of the most horrible.
Everywhere. like you go to any corner of the world, it's like that. You come to India also, there
Yeah.
are rude people and there are nice people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Karan, this was such a nice conversation. Thank you so much for taking out the time. And anybody who is like, on this channel and is watching my conversation with Karan for the first time, take a look at his channel. He's uploading a lot of cool videos there. And I'll put the link for that in the description below. Thank you so much again, Karan. And I'll see you around.
Thanks. Have a nice one.
Bye.
Bye.